Okay, great.
Great.
So, hello, everybody, and it is Tuesday, September 28th. There's a lot going on campus and here on our virtual Career Tuesday. So, I'm Judy Stewart in the Business Career Center, and we are very lucky to have Nielsen joining us today.
Yep.
And Shatik Gatlin is joining us from Nielsen. So I just want to welcome everybody in person, or if you watch this afterwards on YouTube. So I'm just going to start, and then Shatik, I'm going to ask you to take it from there. Just lost Shatik on the video.
Nope. I'm here. I was just I'm sweating, so I'm just trying to wipe my face. That's all. That's all. No, I'm still here.
That's because you're running all over today.
I know, right?
It's all good.
Sort of.
It's
Yeah.
all good.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what I just wanted to say in general was that Nielsen has been a great employer for UConn. We have many alumni there. We even have a career intern. Oh, sorry. I'll just say it. We have a career intern within our own group that's going to Nielsen IQ. So I've already messed up because that's a separate division. But anyway, we're going to let you tell us the difference between the divisions of Nielsen. So Nielsen is about ratings, and it's about audiences everywhere, and it's a great company to help employers better understand who their audiences are and where they should invest their revenue to reach their audiences. So what I'm going to do at this point is to just ask you, Shatik, just to tell us about Nielsen just in general, and then we'll take it from there.
You got it, Judy. Thank you. And that was a fantastic introduction. And so, good afternoon, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here and to be able to engage with you all. Judy is correct that the University of Connecticut, she says Nielsen's been a great employer partner for the University of Connecticut, and likewise, University of Connecticut, or UConn rather, has been a great institution for us to recruit from. We've had many, of UConn students come through Nielsen, particularly in our financial leadership program, which is what I'm going to discuss this afternoon. But that still remain with the company. And in fact, last week we were on campus at the on-campus in person rather career fair. And I had a fellow UConn alum with me. Her name is Allie Myers. She's actually a second year associate in our financial leadership program, and she was very excited to go back home, to recruit her fellow UConn um, students. And so Nielsen, again, Judy hit the nail right on the head. We are a ratings company at our core. And how I like to describe us more specifically is that we're a media measurement and data analytics company. And essentially what that means is that for us, we measure and track audience content consumption, which is really a fancy way of saying we measure what people are watching in the form of media content across devices and across distribution channels, right? Because what's happening in the media industry today is that distribution channels are changing. And what I mean by that is that, in where your favorite TV shows are normally, released, every season, right? And they have the different seasons, and they're all released through traditional television. What we've seen over the past 5 to 10 years, right, is this fragmentation of the audience in terms of, well, I think I'm going to watch it on streaming service, right? Or even when you think about going to the movie theaters, right? The pandemic has really exacerbated the reliance on streaming services, um, because folks want to be able to just watch the movie from home, right? And spend that one-time price, to watch it right then and there, or watch it however many times they want, as opposed to spending $75 to go to the movie theaters because you got to get the popcorn and the drink, etc. And so Nielsen is really at the center of tracking all of that. And the difference between Nielsen and Nielsen IQ, we were one combined company earlier this year, and in fact, we call each other cousins now. So we actually sold off our IQ business in March to another company because the focal points of each of them were different. Right at the foundation of both of them is this idea to track the consumer as well as to provide ratings. However, the end result of each of the different companies, Nielsen and Nielsen IQ is all about tracking consumer purchasing behavior, whereas Nielsen Global Media, or Nielsen the media company, is all around tracking watching behavior, or rather media consumption, because it's beyond just traditional television. We also track podcasts listening behavior as well as traditional radio listening behavior in the form of, you're in your car and you're listening to the radio. And so that's a little bit more about Nielsen. Does that make sense? Does that answer your
Yeah,
question,
that
Judy?
sounds great. Thank
Great.
you. So now tell us the specific area that you are looking for. You mentioned financial leadership programs, and that is including internships and full-time positions. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. Correct.
Okay, so you want to just in general, like where are these positions based
Yep.
and what is the profiles that you're looking for those positions?
Sure. No, I appreciate that question. So Judy is correct. We're recruiting for our financial leadership program, which for full-time candidates, that is a 2-year rotational program, um, where essentially you would have 4 6-month jobs, right? Four jobs across 6 months each, 24 months, 2 years, where you essentially rotate across our global finance organization, um, really meant to give you sort of a deep dive into what it means to work in global finance at Nielsen, right? We're a Fortune 500 publicly traded company, and so there's a lot of dynamics, right, that are involved in running, right, a corporate finance function for a public company, and the leadership program is meant to give you exposure to that. For intern candidates, that shows up, or that is transpired in the form of a 10-week experience, the summer between your junior and senior year, where you are assigned to one of our finance teams and you have 10 weeks to work on a project based on that particular finance team's choosing. And at the end of that summer, you basically do a presentation to our senior finance committee, including the global CFO, around what you were able to accomplish during that internship. And we try to model the internship similar to the program, so because it's internships are basically 10-week interviews, right? It's an interview for us to be able to interview you. It's also an interview for you to be able to interview us, right? And so we try to design the internship program to sort of somewhat mirror our leadership program in the form of enhanced mentoring, in the form of being a part of committees and planning social events. My lovely colleague Zoe has joined us, coming from the other event, so she's also running from one event to the other, and she's actually our finance leadership program manager. Um, and so that's a little bit more about our finance leadership program, right? So you have the full-time experience,
Mhm.
again, which is, a 2-year management training program where you rotate every 6 months. And to augment that experience, we also have enhanced training in the form of coursework that's taught by our senior finance
That's
leaders.
fantastic.
We also have enhanced mentorship, right, where everyone's aligned to one senior finance leader during the course of their time in the program. And then we also have other, mentoring and guidance in the form of one-to-one buddy relationships with an individual who's a year ahead of you in the program, as well as we also try to match, where there's availability, we try to match candidates, or excuse me, associates, to alumni who have gone through the program. And sometimes that senior mentor who's on the senior finance team may also happen to be an alum, right? Because we've had this program for about a decade now. And so, there are a lot of individuals who have come through the program and are still with the company.
So, Shatik and Zoe, welcome also. Thank you for joining us. I know that the world is virtual now, but I don't know if and when there are any plans to go back to an office and where those offices might be.
Yep, and it's so funny because that was the last part of your question that I did not address. And so, that's still evolving for us. I will say that our internship was virtual this past summer, and it was the first time we did it, and it went really well. Um, Nielsen is, has developed the smart work strategy where, they want to meet people where they are in terms of their own individual working needs. And so, that is constantly changing. And I'll certainly let Zoe chime in on that. But what we try to do is where possible, and if the world will allow, it just depends on Nielsen's policies because we don't know yet. We'd like to have our internship experience be in person in New York City. That's where our headquarters is. And we also, our rotational program, it's hard to have it's hard to build community and camaraderie virtually. So again, where possible, we want to have the rotational program experience be in person as well, where the first year, all of our associates will be in New York for that first year. And then for the second year, based on their performance and based on business need, they'd have the opportunity to rotate geographically as well, right? So we have, a major office hub in Chicago, we have a major office hub in Tampa, Florida, and we also have offices around the world. All of that we kind of evaluate almost on like a rotation by rotation basis. But great question, and thanks for reiterating it because I didn't answer it the first time you asked.
Okay. Now, after they go through that 2-year rotation program, are they, what's the process for them to be placed
Yep.
in a role or in an office?
Yep. And I want to try to get Zoe in here. Zoe, do you want to answer that one? Oh, you're not on mute. I see you're not on mute, but
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so the rolling off process is kind of similar to almost a med school match situation where we get a list of opportunities that are available in the business at that senior financial analyst level. And we share that with the associates that are rolling off the program. And then they go ahead and set up individual calls with all of the managers, with the people on the team to get a better feel for what those roles may be. And then there's, they do their preferences. The FLPs do their preferences, and then the managers also do their preferences so that they can kind of, figure out what might be the best fit for them. And oftentimes people end up getting their first choice. Oftentimes too, it's people that, they might have done already a rotation on that team. So they've already had that 6 months experience with the team, and then they know that's where they want to go back and continue after the program. Another area outside of all of that, we actually have a continuation of the leadership programs called the corporate audit staff. And so this corporate audit staff is for people who do the 2 years in the program, and then they go on and want to continue kind of getting that mentorship, getting those experiences as speakers, professional development that maybe you want to get as much if you went straight into the business. So oftentimes people join the corporate audit staff where you can really refine your accounting skills. And so actually that's what I did myself. So when I rolled off the program, I went into corporate audit staff. I have done that for the past 2 years. Shatik went the other route where he did the med school match with roles in the business and figured out that he wanted to go more into financial planning and analysis. So there's a good mixture of people that continue on in the leadership programs, and then people who are ready to roll off and kind of get more into the nitty gritty and start getting exposure to the areas that they know, like where they're most passionate about. Shatik, did I cover that? Do you have any additional things to add there?
Yeah, no, I think that covered it perfectly. I was, going to emphasize that same sort of dual track where you can either go into the corporate audit staff or you can, join the business as we call it. And the only thing I will say is I think, the broader business, and finance community are supportive of both tracks, right? So, we certainly need, individuals, or want individuals rather to join our corporate audit staff because it's another layer of leadership development and sort of an enhanced exposure. But we also need solid people coming out of the program to join the business, right? And be able to help steer that ship also, right? Because when you join the business, as we call it, you basically become, depending on what role you take on, you become almost like a finance business partner to our sales organization or our technology organization. I, for one, work with our technology organization on all of their budgeting and broader finance needs. And so, we try to give our associates the opportunity to be able to do whichever they feel is going to suit their career needs at that time.
Another question now, focusing more on the summer internship. So if if corporations are back in office in summer 2022, is that summer internship also New York City based? I know you have an office in Westport, so I don't know if you could just talk a little bit about where that might be located if people are back in the office.
Yep. So I think our Westport location might actually belong to our cousin, Nielsen
Oh,
IQ,
okay.
I think. I personally have not been to that office. We have had an office in Wilton, Connecticut, so just north of Stamford.
Mhm.
But our internship, again, from the basis of community building and camaraderie, historically, all of our well, I shouldn't say this. Historically, all of our interns have been in offices. But that was when we were a little bit of a bigger company, right? When we had our Nielsen IQ with us. Um, Actually, we haven't had an internship with just our media company, and excuse me, an in-person internship with just the media company since that time, in part because of COVID. But I think the plan, right, Zoe, would be to have the interns in person in New York if we can.
Got it. Okay. I'm just going to ask you guys one more question, and then please, if there's any other questions from the students here or anybody else on the career team, ask them or put them in chat. And that is that you mentioned you were at the live career fair last week at UConn. So can you help us understand what makes a student stand out and how we can better coach the students so that they do stand out?
Yeah. And so, had a great time. I think I don't have the numbers in front of me anymore, but I think we ended up having, in terms of that check-in sheet that we do, I think we ended up having something like 80 students check in with us. So we had a good amount of students come to our booth. I think for me, what immediately stands out, I think some demonstrated interest, right? So I'm not expecting you to know, everything about Nielsen, but some indication that you have not only come to the career fair because I don't remember what we were out, but because we were giving out lip balms, and nicely colored pens, but you've also taken the time to do a little bit of research and say, okay, Nielsen, I kind of know what you do, and actually, what I will say, there was a good amount of students who did know what we did. Um, but unfortunately, myself and Allie weren't there to recruit for that. We were there to recruit for the finance program because, our broader university relations team tends to have a later timeline than us in finance. Because I'm sure you might know that, all the other companies are vying for the same talent in, the September, October timeframe, which is why we try to stick with that timeline as well. But I think, again, so demonstrated interest, right? So you have a good idea of what we do. And you also have a good idea of the opportunity that we're recruiting for, right? So, again, that showed up a lot last week. And, again, we were unfortunately not able to help just a small subset of students who were coming for our data science opportunities or our, client service opportunities. But I was impressed by their, interest in Nielsen and their research. And therefore, I said, hey, send me an email. I'll try to route you to the right person. I think, of course, goes without saying, right? Someone who has, the professional dress, if they're able to have, I know everyone doesn't have the wherewithal, to buy professional clothing because they're expensive, but, someone who's well dressed, well mannered, and then I think also, someone who may not know everything that they're trying to do, but they have a good idea, right? So they may not know exactly, I'm not asking them to tell me their passion or, tell me, what they want to do, with their career in 30 years if they don't know yet, because I don't even know what I want to do with my career in 30 years. However, I think, someone who's, pretty articulate, like, okay, well, I'm an accounting major and I'm exploring opportunities, or I'm a finance major or a marketing major, whatever their major is or their area of focus, because I had like quite a few, first year students or freshmen. I'm so used to saying first year because that's what Babson calls them. First year students. I'm sorry, I went to Babson. I don't think I mentioned that. Up in Massachusetts. But for first year students who were like, really polished and we're like, I don't really know what I want to do yet, but I'm considering, these courses, or I really like that. I think just some idea right around what it is that they're interested in, and and just out there exploring, right? I think it's, I think what I will say, and I'll let Zoe, chime in as well, because she was at her own alma mater's in-person career fair, is that I not particularly fond of individuals who say, I don't really know what you're doing. I don't know what you're here for. So can you tell me more? Right. I mean, I get that there's a little bit of a naivete there, and I respect that. They're students, they got a lot going on. Sometimes things go over their head, and I was a student once as well. Um, but it kind of goes back to that earlier point of some kind of demonstrated interest. You kind of looked us up, have a general sense of
Yeah.
who we are.
And it's easy to get information these days.
Yes, it is very easy to get information.
Zoe, anything you want to add before we go to the questions?
Yeah, I think Shatik pretty much covered it, but I would just add a couple of comments as well. I think, because I think you hit on, Shatik, like all of the main points, but at the end of the conversation as well, I think it's helpful if the student actually like has some questions prepared in advance. I think that shows that they're interested and they did their prep work beforehand, and that goes for interviews as well. I think it's always important to come to an interview with at least, I would say, 3 to 4 questions, probably, depending on the time that each of those take. And then I think it's always good practice too, if you are really interested in an opportunity, to make sure that you understand the next steps, get the follow up, contact information if needed. So, really, just like at the end of the conversation, wrapping it up nicely, I think that is really key and important for students to concentrate on.
That's a great
Mhm.
point. Okay, I'm going to jump to the questions. Somebody asked, do you have similar development programs or opportunities for other areas such as marketing, HR, operations?
Yeah, so we used to, and I also can't speak to Nielsen IQ, although what we did last week, was for candidates who expressed a genuine interest in those other type of programs. Again, because we used to be combined, we used to have these combined programs for
Yes.
HR, for technology operations, etc. I know that at Nielsen Media, it's too early to tell, because again, as I mentioned, our university relations team are starting their career fair, excuse me, um, starting their outreach a little bit later. So certainly would definitely encourage you to explore the Nielsen website. But I also, at the risk of sending talent away, I believe Nielsen IQ might have more formal, programs. For example, I know that they have a commercial program, or commercial analyst experience, which is more of like a client relations sales
Right.
experience, right? Where you're kind of working on client teams, and some of their clients are, some of the bigger, CPG companies in the world, like the P&Gs and the Cokes and the Pepsis. Even in Connecticut, right? Well, brands, people who make Sharpie markers and everything else that they make. And so certainly would encourage you, again, at the risk of sending
And
them
just to
away.
also mention, for Olivia who asked the question, we are also having their friendly sister join us. Nielsen IQ will be with us October 12th on Career Tuesday. So you'll hear more about that side of the business. So
Yeah.
the next question is, can you describe the stages of the selection process for the financial leadership program?
Yep, no problem. I'll take that, and I just know that my colleague has to jump. Like I said, we're running today, so
Yeah,
I'll take that
that's okay.
question.
We're supposed to
Um,
end at 1:30 also.
no
So,
problem,
yeah,
no problem. But yes, thank you, Grace, for the question. So essentially, especially if you've already filled out that check-in form, essentially send out an email, probably this afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Here's more information. I'll send you our one pager, which has a link to our application. But I'll also include the application link, and depending on if you're a junior, Grace, and you're applying for an internship, we'll basically obviously your resume, try to get you in for an interview, and then after that interview, we'll make a decision on inviting you to be a part of our internship program. But if you're a senior applying for our full-time experience, kind of similar, although that process is a little bit more elongated. You will apply, you'll submit your resume, we'll evaluate your resume, and then try to get you slated to be interviewed by one of our finance leaders. Typically someone who came out of the program and is now currently in the business as a, finance manager, senior finance manager. And then after that interview, we will, that particular interviewer will evaluate your performance in the interview and then determine if you, determine your candidacy for being a part of our final round interview process, which is a 2-day, so it's a multi-day interview experience. We're trying to plan it for in person in New York. We don't know. We were actually trying to make that decision this week so we can let our candidates know. And then it's after that multi-day experience. I know some companies call it a super day or,
Yeah.
so Nielsen calls it our finance leadership program invitational because you have to be invited. And that's a sort of a, I say multi-day, it's like a day and a half, right? You come into the city, on one day, round of interviews, we take you to dinner. The next day, what we've typically done in the past is put you in groups and have you work on a case study and then present it to a panel of finance leaders, excuse me, and then we'd send you on your merry way. So
That's great.
it.
Oh, I'm sorry, Shatik. Go on, you can finish.
No,
Yeah.
so I just wanted to kind of explain the differences between the process. Depending on if you're an intern, it's more of like one interview, and then we'll make a decision that way. For the full-time program, especially because it's a longer commitment, right? It's easier for someone to commit to 10 weeks versus, 2 years. It's a little bit more of a longer process. So it's an interview, and then you'd be considered to be invited to our final round interview, which takes place at the end of October, early November.
That's great. Saif has asked, are there any opportunities for sophomores?
Right now, we don't. Unfortunately, we don't have opportunities specifically for sophomores. I don't, however, discourage sophomores from applying. I review, Zoe and I look at all the resumes. And so, I don't discourage students from applying. Our internship is pretty competitive because it's so small. But Saif, you might, if you're a sophomore, which I assume you are because you asked the question, you might be that one sophomore that we admit. I mean, we don't typically have a number of like we admit 1 or 2 sophomores. It's just really on a candidate pool by candidate pool basis. But by applying, right, you have now demonstrated an interest in us, and it enables us to follow up with you down the road to say, hey, we couldn't offer now. We'd love to consider you for your junior year internship, or we'd love for you to consider us rather for your junior year internship.
So thank you. So somebody, we will have other students that will view this afterwards on a video on our YouTube. So the form that you put in there, Shatik, how would they get that, or do they just apply and then they'll see something similar?
Yeah, so I can certainly provide it to you, Judy, and if
Okay.
and if you want to include it into your in the
Yes.
description of your YouTube channel, or student might be interested, they can also and I also include in my follow-up to you, Judy, I'll include a link to our website which talks about the finance leadership program, and at the bottom of that site it has the application which is due on Friday. So I know that's a little bit of a quick turnaround. That's why I'm glad we were able to get this Career Tuesday in. But again, if students are interested, you can always send them our way.
Okay, great. So October 1st, I just want to underscore, is the deadline for both of the programs, for the internship and for the full-time. Okay, great. So we will underscore that. Any other questions? I want to be receptive to the fact that it is now 1:32. Any
Well,
other
thankfully,
questions?
I don't have to run anywhere else. So I'm fine to take any other questions. But if there's no other questions, I'm okay with that.
I think we're good. I'm glad that you had a good turnout at the career fair, and we will continue to endorse and market Nielsen, but you guys don't need a lot of marketing because you are a great company. So
thank you so much, Judy, and thanks for your partnership.
Make sure that everybody knows. So thank you, everybody that joined us today, Tuesday, and virtually afterwards. Thank you, Shatik, for joining us. And
my pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you all. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.